Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Alaska Center for Spiritual Living. Thank you for coming out today, and welcome also to those who are watching on YouTube. The number is growing slightly with YouTube each week, so welcome to you as well. Sometimes I like to start with a story, and today's story took place on August 18th, 2012 in Canton, Ohio. Lady by the name of Carrie Gerstenschlager was rushed into the operating room, the emergency operating room for an emergency C-section. Her little baby was under distress. He was 14 weeks before her due date, and it was further complicated. Her water had broke 6 weeks before that, and didn't think that the little boy, his name was Austin, little Austin's lungs were developed enough to allow him to live. And in the womb, he started to go down, and there's a term for it. I don't know what it is. I tried remembering it, but they thought they were going to lose him then, so they rushed in with the C-section, and as soon as he was born, they whisked him off to the intensive care unit, and they got oxygen to him. They threw every bit of technology that we have and every bit of our advances in medicine to save this little baby, but it wasn't working. He was just way too early. I mean, he was roughly half term, and so the doctor made the decision to talk to the parents and let them know that little Austin wasn't going to make it, and gave them the option of bringing little Austin back into mom and let her hold him while he passed away. And because of some of the other things, they had anticipated that as a possibility, and they were prepared for it, and they said yes. And so they disconnected little baby Austin. He was less than a foot long, and he only weighed 1 pound 4 ounces. They brought him back in and put him on mom's chest to let him die. And she held him, and she told him that she loved him, and she told him that we loved him, and they waited for him to pass away. Dad came in, his name was Chip, and he looked down at little Austin and saw how perfect he was, and his little blonde eyebrows and his little tiny fingernails, and they waited. And it went by an hour, and he didn't pass away. And the nurse came in, and the vital sign that they checked for is his heart rate, and they anticipated that being, starting to slow down. That's what precedes death. But his heart rate was still going, a little ticking along at 120. And through all the things that they'd done, the highest oxygen saturation they'd been able to get into his blood was 55. And that just wasn't enough. But little Austin made it another hour. And Mom still held him, and another hour went by. And a nurse came in and checked again, and she relayed to Carrie how the whole hospital was taken with the story of little Austin and his fight to stay alive. 7 o'clock that night, little Austin was still alive, and the nurses traded shifts, and the new nurse that was on came in, and she checked, and she asked to see little Austin, and he was so snuggled in, so tight. She said his heart rate's still good, his color is good. So she went to the person that was in charge during the night of the intensive care unit for the little babies, and she explained the situation. They called the doctor, and the doctor just explained, sometimes it takes a little while for him to pass away, but, and his little heart's strong, but this is just one that's going to take a little while. And the dad had said, is there any chance? And the doctor said, no, there's no chance he's going to live. But each hour went by. The minutes added up, and they turned into hours, and the hours went by, and finally that same nurse got the head again, and they went back and said, the little guy's still living. So the head doctor went in, and once again they unwrapped him and had a pacifier, and he was sucking on the pacifier so loud it's hard for her to listen to his heart. And she got her stethoscope down there to listen to his heart, and he tried pushing her stethoscope away. So she called the attending physician at home again in the middle of the night. He'd gone to bed, of course. By now it was getting close to midnight, and she said, the little guy's making it. And she said, what do we do? And he said, see if you can get an oxygen reading. And so the nurse came in, and she said, I don't want to give any false hope or anything like that. The prognosis is still very, very bad, but we just want to assess exactly where little baby Austin is at. And when they looked at his oxygen level in his blood, it was 88. So the doctor from home called Chip, the dad, and he said, Chip, I don't know what's happening here, but this is a whole new ball game. It's something that Chip will never forget. It's a whole new ball game. And so they took little Austin away from mom again, took him back to the intensive care, went back into the incubator, went back into the oxygen saturation, went into the breathing apparatus that he had. Actually, it was a little tiny baby CPAP that was just giving him some straight oxygen. And he made it past midnight. And that really touched Carrie because her little baby had lived for a day. And the hours started adding up, and he made it till morning. And then he made it till midday. He made it till the shift changed again. And all the nurses were still talking about this baby that just doesn't seem to be on his path to pass away. And he made it through that first day, and then he made it through the night again, and he made it through the next day and the next. And little Austin stayed in that hospital for 99 days. And he had to be on oxygen quite a bit of the time, and he had a lot of other things. And they still had worries about some of his other development and whatnot. But after being given up for dead, little Austin made it. Our theme for this month is compassion. As I dealt with this theme and how I was going to present it, I came to the awareness that there are really two real channels for compassion and this one's compassion for others. And I don't know about you, but the compassion that I felt for Carrie and Chip Gerstenslager was palpable. But then I think that there's another compassion, that's compassion for ourselves. And sometimes maybe that's a little bit more difficult. Looked up compassion in that renowned academic source, Wikipedia. Compassion is defined as sympathetic pity and concern for the suffering or misfortune of others, accompanied by a strong desire to alleviate the suffering. I think our story illustrates that well. But as most of you know, I'm all about application. It's one thing to read these lofty deals. It's another, how do we apply it in our lives? How do we make this a part of who we are and how we live? And that's why we changed the candle lighting up to reflect all of the different faith traditions' interpretation of the Golden Rule. I don't claim to be a real smart guy, but I am smart enough to look out and see when you've got so many different people, every different major religion, representing 95+% of the people on the planet, saying basically the same thing, there's enough smoke there that I think there's probably some fire. And so I think that this admonition that we've been given to treat others as we wish to be treated has a lot to go for it. And I think that in the seed of that is compassion. The way to put compassion into work is through the Golden Rule. The title of my talk today is A Tender Heart, and it is representative of little Austin and his powerful heart. My 3 points today, I'm going to talk about no failures, I'm going to talk about living in the moment, and finally I'm going to talk about faith. First of all, no failures. Our natural state is wholeness. Our natural state is wholeness, to be whole and complete. Now, we have appearances that are different than that, but our natural state is that state of absolute wholeness. The way I like to think about this, and sometimes I have to reduce things down to pretty simple little building blocks, but that's the way it works for me, is that there is some type of a divine creative force in the universe. I don't know what it is, but that force, whatever it is, has made all that is. And it had to make it out of something, and there wasn't anything there for it to make it out of other than itself. So that the manifest universe and everything in it, both the visible and the invisible, the mental as well as the physical, all have to be made from that same God stuff. So each and every one of us are made of God stuff. We have divine DNA within us. It can be no other way. We are beloved children of God. We all have that divine nature within us. And it makes no sense to me that this infinite presence, this whatever you want to call it, spirit, God, whatever, would create itself through us to torture itself, to make it miserable, to make it lousy, to make this experience crappy. What it wants to do is to do the same things that we want. It wants supreme joy. It wants happiness. It wants to embrace its wholeness. Now, in order to make it meaningful so that we're just not some sort of puppets at the hands of a great marionette, we have been given free choice. And in that free choice, we have been given the freedom to choose bondage over freedom. We have been given the right and the freedom to choose lack and limitation over prosperity and abundance. We have been given the gift to choose separateness, to be separate from one another and to be separate from God. And when those choices that we make sometimes produce some things that we don't enjoy. But there isn't some God up there that's going to whack us on the knuckles because we made a bad choice. It's all natural. We had a good example this morning. A young lady I was talking to, talking about her daughter has, possible allergies, and she's suggested she not eat certain foods. Well, it can't run around this teenage daughter and make sure she never eats these certain foods. But the universe has already got it. If she eats the foods and she's allergic to it, she's going to suffer the consequences. We don't need to get involved. And that's exactly how the divine is with us. We are free to eat the things that aren't good for us. Now, we also get to suffer from it. But there isn't some God that's going to whack us up alongside the head or on the knuckles for making a bad choice. That isn't even a sermon. I don't know where this came from. Wholeness is our natural state. Perfect God, perfect man. Just like little Austin. Perfect baby. No, his lungs weren't developed. A lot of things were wrong with little Austin, but little Austin was perfect for exactly where he was. And that divine creative force pressing to express itself through little Austin is going to do it one way or the other. No matter what science does, no matter what we do, that divine creative force is going to manifest. And we can't stop it. We can get our bloated nothingness out of the way and allow it to go, but we're not going to obstruct that divine creative force. To see or not to see, life is abundant. It is only in our sense of separation that we feel threatened, limited, or fragmented. Ernest Holmes wrote, "A sense of separation from good causes us to feel restricted, while a sense of unity with good changes the currents of causation and brings happier conditions into the experience." We can change. We all have experiences. Experiences don't have us. Challenges stretch us and expand our awareness and allow us to see that these negative experiences are falsehoods and dependencies. You are not your experiences. Point number 2, living in the moment. If we step into the future, we very often create worry. We worry about what's going to happen. How in our philosophy, we have come to the realization that our thoughts are creative. And so if we are focusing our thoughts on something that might happen, and we are afraid, we are worrying about something that might happen, guess what we're doing? We're just supporting that action. We're supporting that which we don't want to happen to us. Same things with the past. The past is behind us. We can't change it. When we are focused on the past, we focused on regret and remorse. We can't change what went on before. It's history. The present is the only time that we can control. Recognize the powerful presence of God within each and every one of us. The power of God that resides in each of us. Our job is to look at each other and see that divine spark in one another. Our job is to see the Austin in one another. Living from lack. It's one thing that we very, very often do is we live from a place of lack. Ernest Holmes once again wrote, "If we lack, if we are poor, if we are without friends, if we are without opportunity, we should be sure to erase from our consciousness any sense of lack." Point number 3, faith. I hesitated using that one because I think this idea of faith gets twisted somehow in a lot of modern theology from all of the different religious traditions and whatnot. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Fear is not the great enemy of man, but fear is a mental attitude and as such can be converted into something else. Fear is the reverse mental attitude to faith, and it is the result of the lack of faith." And this isn't faith as in having faith that something is going to happen. This is faith as in being able to see the divine presence in one another. Having an absolute knowledge, a firm commitment that each and every one of us, regardless of any other metric, political affiliation, skin color, gender, age, anything that you can divide, each and every one of us are beloved children of God. So, how do we go about driving out fear and building faith? Came up with a 4-pronged approach. First of all, love. Surround the person or the situation that is causing you distress with love. Love them to death. Biggest pain in the butt you can imagine, love them to death. Number 2, bless it. Acknowledge that the person or the situation is here to help you grow in some way. Thank it and bless it. When we bless, we acknowledge that a person or thing is a source of good in our lives. Blessing your enemy helps dismantle that your enemy is against you. Your enemy is simply a mirror to that place inside of yourself where you are not connected to God. Number 3, do the right thing. Release your need to be right and instead demonstrate your wholeness and worth. Sometimes we get so wrapped up with a need to be right that we get into arguments, and give up the need to be right and recognize the truth. Recognize that wholeness in yourself and in others. And then, of course, what do we do here? What the major tenet of what we do in this place? We pray. Exactly. Number 4, pray. Pray for those who spitefully use or persecute you. It's important to remember that the person or situation is for you and not against you. It may be abrasive, but it's molding you into something greater. It is a gift. Praying for the highest outcome for all helps to ground you in truth. Bless you. Instead of giving you a takeaway today, I'm going to do another story. And this is a man by the name of Jimmy Gillese. And Jimmy Gillese owns a bar in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. They have diving there by this beach. He has a lot of divers come in to his bar and whatnot. And one day he got a panic call. A lady had lost her wallet. And she reported that, the last place that she remembered having it was in his bar. She'd finished diving and she went in there to wait for her ride. And when she got home, she didn't have her wallet. She didn't care about the $150 that was in it. She didn't care about the credit cards or driver's license or anything else. But she'd been diving and her wedding ring was just newly married. She'd taken it off and put it in there so she didn't lose it while she was diving. And she really cared a lot about that wedding ring. So Jimmy was the kind of guy that really took pride in his establishment, and he wanted to help her in some way that he could. And he went back and watched hours and hours and hours from 16 different videos, 16 different cameras. And sure enough, he found her. He saw where she came in. She sat down at this one place. She got up and she left a few minutes later. And then just right after that, a person came in, hood pulled up, everything, sat down at that seat, quickly put something into his pocket and left. And so he captured that video. He got a still from it, and he put it out on social media. He put it out on Facebook. It says, anybody know who this guy might be? 2 hours later, he got a phone call. And it was a young man. His name was Rivers Prather. He was a 17-year-old young man. And he said, I'm the guy in that video. And so Jimmy just asked him, did you take that wallet? And he said, yes. And he said, we need to get it back. And he explained that it was a lady's wedding ring. And Little Rivers said that the only reason he took it is he hadn't eaten in 2 days. And he looked in it, he saw the stuff, he saw that ring, and he didn't think there could be a jewel that big. He thought it must be fake. And so he took the $150, and then he just took the wallet containing the ring and threw it into the ocean next to the thing. Well, there were quite a few divers that, and old Jimmy, being a bartender, he had some influence there over some of the divers, and he convinced them to come out and do some searching. And meanwhile, the lady had turned in that, you know, it had been lost and whatnot, and the detectives figured it out pretty quick, and they put 2 and 2 together, so the detectives showed up, and Jimmy Gillies started thinking about that. And this 17-year-old kid, if they get him, it was going to be grand larceny. He'd be going to the big boys' prison. And it's a 17-year-old kid. He said he couldn't have weighed 130 pounds. And he didn't think that was right. So he talked the detective into waiting while his divers were out there. And about noon the next day, one of the divers came up, and he had found that wallet. The lady immediately dropped her charges. Everybody was cheering when they found it, including the detective. But Jimmy realized that this young man, River Prather, wasn't going to be any different. And he also realized that he had a big house. His kids were small. He had an extra room. So he gave this kid a job sweeping out the bar at night, and he let him stay in his room until he could get on his feet. Doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's putting compassion to work. And that's what our theme is going to be for this month. And so it is with this attitude of compassion, this awareness of that divine presence that is within each and every one of us. From Rivers Prather to Little Austin, to each and every person sitting in this room, to every person on this planet as an expression of the Most High. Simply recognize that as we live and move and have our being on this earthly plane, we are entitled to all that is good. It is ours. It is our birthright. That we are greater than our conditions. And it makes no difference what conditions are going in our world. If we are faced with health challenges, there is a power that is greater than any health challenge, and it is operating for us at every moment. It makes no difference if we are experiencing lack and limitation. There is a power in the universe that is greater than we are, that has access to the unlimited resources of the entire universe. And it is our birthright here and now. No matter if we are facing the conditions, the appearance of separation from one another, separation from God, we know that there is a love in the universe. That love is God, and that love is bigger than any sense or appearance of separation. Regardless of how things may look, how they may appear, how they may be, we know that that love, the love of God, is stronger, is greater than any appearance. For that is the thing that is permanent. And so every relationship, whether it be a romantic relationship, whether it be a family relationship, whether it be a relationship at work. It makes no difference, because this is all the very love of God. And so we just give thanks. We give thanks for health. We give thanks for abundance and prosperity. And we give thanks for the love of God. And now it is only for us to step back, let it go, let it be. And so it is.